Violence has since spread across the Sahel region and more recently to coastal countries as militants in different countries seize territories despite military operations to push them back. Burkina Faso is one of several West African countries battling a bloody terrorist insurgency that took root in neighboring Mali over a decade ago, as thousands have been killed and more than 6 million displaced. And of course, we have a detailed information for you in this intro package. Take a listen.
The landlocked nation of Burkina Faso has over the years faced a complex security situation marked by an upsurge in terrorism and intercommunal violence, an unfortunate situation that dates back to as far as 2012. In one of the recent attacks, at least 70 hapless citizens, mainly elderly people and children, were murdered after gunmen invaded Zaongo, a village north of Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital. Although the exact number of deaths, wounded persons, and missing persons is yet to be established, the attack, which happened on November 5th, saw the unidentified assailants killing residents and setting properties on fire. Reacting to the situation, the Burkina Faso authorities say it has opened a full-scale investigation into the massacre. Burkina Faso is one of several West African countries battling a bloody terrorist insurgency that took root in neighboring Mali in over a decade ago. Violence has since spread across the Sahel region and more recently to coastal countries as militants in the different countries seize territories despite military operations to push them back. Thousands have been killed and more than 6 million displaced. Although the Burkina Faso security forces, supported by international partners, have been actively engaged in counter-terrorism efforts, the challenges, however, persist.
I have with me on the program today Koanou Mouloro, political analyst from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and also Adib Sani, security expert from Accra, Ghana, and also joining is Bimisola Anima Saumon, of course, associate professor at Center for Peace and Strategic Studies, University of Ilorin, all the way from Abuja. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I would like to start off with the questions concerning some of these very disturbing stories coming out from Burkina Faso, and I would like to start off with you, Koanou. Now, Burkina Faso has been displaced or has a displacement of about 2 million people. Now, this has been named the world's most neglected crisis. Attention seems to be more on the Israel-Hamas and also Russia-Ukraine crisis. Why is that?
All right. Thank you so much for the floor again. Koanou Mouloro here. And I'm so much happy to be joining this very program. And now, as to the question, we are in a world of politics, and most of the time when you don't happen to buy into the ideas and philosophies of certain gurus or certain people that have a certain supremacy or certain power, they will always use the communication in order to have some kind of negative information as regard to your country. So I would say here the attention has been a little bit drawn onto the situation that is going on in Israel, in should I say Russia or Ukraine, in the detriment of what is going on in our country, just because I would just say we are in a situation where we are trying to free ourselves. We are in a situation where the way, just the road we are trying to take is not a road that will favor many of the superpowers that we have in the world. So it is quite understandable to see that the people are not having attention on what is going on in our different regions. Let me just say Sahel region, because it is not a war that will favor them at all. As you know, we are people that have been subject to certain kind of colonization that still that is kind of be going on, that is known as neocolonialism. But just here, we just know the reason is just simply the people don't buy into what we're doing. The people are not having expectation closed on that just because it does not favor them. Does not favor them. So that would be just my mind here.
All right. I mean, you are there. You're very much on ground. I mean, how dire will you say the situation is, in Burkina Faso when it comes to security? Is it as widely reported, or is it underreported?
All right. Thank you so much. Here, the international outlook may happen to be very different from what is happening in the country. It may happen, or it might happen, just because of this press release, some of kind of conspiracies that tend to put the country in a certain position where it's being looked down on. So here, as somebody that is living in the country, Ouagadougou, the capital city, I'm getting a lot of news, but the situation, I will not say that the situation is so much dire, or let me just say it's very dangerous. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. In the country, it's true, there is insecurity, but people are moving almost everywhere. People are moving almost everywhere. And just that we have some remote places where the terrorists have implanted, certain kind of zone. They have certain kind of a board and whereabout where they happen to settle down, and to have like a certain kind of a military base, because we have been going through this situation for more than 8 years, since 2014 and well before. So it is a very long story. It's a very long situation that have been undergoing. But as to today, the situation is getting better as regard to what is happening on the ground. It's true we have a lot of figures on the land. We have figures that are being spread everywhere. But what is happening here today, we have a certain kind of improvement in the process.
Okay, I would come back to you, Mouloro. Let me go to Adib right now.
Sorry, the name is Mouloro.
Oh, okay.
So thanks. Mouloro. Instead of L is K.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Let's go to Adib right now. Now, the crisis seems to be multi-dimensional. The military on one side, the militia, and of course, separatist and Islamic groups on another. Now, can you give some sort of a perspective to all of this before we now dwell on the root cause?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to your production team, and of course, a very good evening to my co-panelists. Indeed, Burkina Faso is a country I have had so much interest in over the period. I've been to Burkina Faso not once. About 2 months ago, I went by road all the way to Paga in the northern part of the country. That is the last town before you enter Burkina Faso. I entered into Dakola, which is the border town in Burkina Faso that separates it from Ghana. I went all the way to Po. I went all the way to Ouagadougou. I did an assessment there. We're able to go out. The nightlife is great. You might not have a sense of what we are used to getting to hear on radio and TV. But the thing about the country is, at any point in time, terrorists can strike and vanish. Okay, so the fact that you appear safe doesn't necessarily mean you are completely safe. According to the Global Terrorism Index, Burkina Faso is the second most impacted country by terrorism based on the number of attacks the country has suffered last year. After Afghanistan, it is the most impacted country in the world. And it's also unfortunately found within a very restive belt, that is the Sahel region, which is the most impacted region, according to the same document, by terrorism globally, accounting for about 44% of global attacks. So Burkina Faso is an interesting case because if we are not able to secure Burkina Faso, I don't think we'll be able to secure Ghana or Mali or Ivory Coast or perhaps Benin or Togo. That is why we need to pay attention to what is going on in the country and work collectively to improve on its security.
I'd like to go back to you, Mouloro. You said something about Burkina Faso being relatively calm as people being able to move around. I would like to talk about the impact or the efforts of the military government on ground. Will you say that in any way has helped create some sort of stability?
Before I proceed, I'd like to say thank you to Sir, the panelists for his right point. And yeah, as to what is going on here, you said the question is, could you please remind me? You said the question
Okay,
is?
I was trying to ask you if at all the military government in the country, has maybe in a way influenced the sort of stability, the change of government, so to speak, has influenced some sort of stability in the country.
All right. Yeah, as the co-panelist said, yeah, of course, I can say things as regard to the numbers, things are moving a little bit ahead, even though it is still complicated to move about, and in some areas, but I will say as to today, the situation is getting better because we are very optimistic of what is happening on the ground. And if I remember what the president said, we are still at the level of introduction as regard to this very war, because formally to or prior to the president Ibrahim Traoré to be on the power, there were numbers of problems that couldn't help us to really fight this very crisis. For example, I can name the equipment problem. We have issues related to equipment and other things. So this government, military government, has tried to acquire more equipment that can help to fight this very crisis. The situation is getting better. It is a little bit more.
So compared to what used to be obtainable before, of course, Ibrahim Traoré took over the government and became, of course, the head, and what you have now, in terms of comparative analysis, particularly in the area of security, what is your assessment?
All right. As regards to that, as I said previously, things are going on in the right process because they are implementing new strategies to counter these attacks from the terrorists. And as to now, regarding the numbers and the figures, we are still getting better because we are getting some of the lands back, some of our lands, some of the territories that were occupied are being taken back. And for example, we can take the case of Palabrantu, we can take the case of Solenjo, we can take the case of some region in Dori. So we are happening to take back some of the land, some of the territories that were occupied by terrorists. This is to say that we are making progress in this very fight. We are making progress because we are getting back some of the land. But as I said, my co-panelists, terrorists are almost everywhere. But they can strike at any moment, as he said. That is the real problem. That's the real problem. Otherwise, and when they strike, they don't make difference. Sometimes they don't happen to make a difference between the armed forces and the population, the citizen. Sometimes the civilians are even victims, for example, to cite the case of Zaongo, where we had a lot of civilian people who were dead, who were killed. Okay, so as they are not armed, there is very likely that when they are struck or when they are attacked, it is likely to have a big number of victims.
Okay.
So that is why sometimes we are having some inappropriate kind of figures as regards to the dates.
Okay. All right, great. Adib, I would like to come to you. Please feel free to react if, of course, you have to react to some of the things Mouloro said. But to you, I would like to ask, Burkina Faso has endured about 5 years of conflict with militias who have, attacked water resources, forced closure of schools. are now controlling, according to some reports, up to about 40% of the country's territory. Now, how grave do you think this particular impact of the crisis is?
Well, surely it is having human toll. Already, a lot of the economies in West Africa are crawling. Cost of living is high. Cost of basic commodities, including food, is high. There's serious human insecurities, health insecurity, water insecurity, food insecurity, environmental insecurity, political insecurity, etc. And so when it is further exacerbated by these security, other, hard security issues, then it becomes really a very difficult situation to deal with. I can say confidently that some few years back, militancy or terrorism wasn't really something we're expecting to happen here. Even though there was 9/11 in the US, and there's been a series of attacks in Southeast Asia and other parts of, the world, West Africa was seen as relatively stable, with a lot of countries adopting democracy, and was a shining example. And so we weren't prepared when these guys decided to strike. I think that is the situation we found ourselves in. And the Burkina Faso is also particularly precarious because of the sanctions regime we've seen imposed on the country as a result of the coup. We have not seen Burkina Faso playing an important role in sub-regional efforts in countering terrorism. Indeed, Burkina was part of the Accra initiative. I'm not seeing that collaboration between Ghana and Burkina Faso and all that. There is low sharing of intelligence amongst all of these countries. And I think it is part of the reason we are where we are today. Almost on weekly basis, we have hundreds, thousands of Burkinabes coming into Ghana to seek shelter. So it's not only affecting Burkina Faso, it is affecting Ghana, because already what is available for Ghanaians is not enough. So when more people come, it puts pressure on social resources, and that would become a much more serious situation to deal with.
But I mean, that's also huge. I mean, is it posing some sort of security threat also to Ghana? Such an influx?
There is no denying that fact. Not once. Some raids have been done in Burkina Faso. Terrorists have been killed. Their phone numbers taken, their phones taken from them, only for the contacts to include certain Ghanaian contacts. Calls that were made using the call log, some were to Ghana. There are, just recently, there were some operations done at some mining areas very close to Ghana in Burkina Faso. ID cards belonging to some suspected terrorists were from Ghana. They were Ghana ID cards, Ghana cards.
So they have. Are you saying that they have, well, I say, contacts or networks that, of course, they work with in Ghana, to sort of foster their operations?
There's no denying that fact, because our borders is very porous, okay? And we are a very closely knit society within West Africa. There are Fulanis in Ghana, Fulanis in Burkina Faso. There are Moshis in Ghana, Moshis in Burkina Faso. So there are family ties as well. Okay, so it is not surprising that terrorists operating in Burkina Faso might have their way into Ghana. Besides, there's evidence that points to the fact that Ghana has become a withdrawal point for these terrorists. When they stage attacks in other countries, they are simply able to, because of the nature of our borders, withdraw into Ghana, retool, rearm, reorganize, and go out to stage attacks again. And there's also evidence pointing to the fact that there are some terrorists from other parts of the West African subcontinent who are based in Ghana and are engaged in illegal mining and other economic activities.
I'd like to go to you, Mouloro, to, of course, get your reaction to some of the things Adib has actually said. And, of course, I would also like to add that for you to confirm whether the report as to the military government forcing civilians to join the fight against Islamic groups is actually true. I mean, we also understand that they have about 40% control of the country. Now, does this, number one, is this true? And also, does it signal that the government seems overpowered or, helpless in this particular fight?
Thank you. I would say maybe that would be a part of, that would be a play on word, like forcing. I wouldn't use that word that is forcing. I would use another word because there was an official note. Okay, we are in time of war, and everything was made clear to everybody. We are in time of war, and communication is very key because when we mismanage the communication at all the levels, it might bring about demoralization. It might bring about euphoria, certain kind of how do we say how do we call it? Certain kind of being afraid or threat to the population. So it was well said that everybody, no matter who you are, you should make sure that whatever you say is true. Whatever you say is encouraging because there are people who are on the battlefield days and night. You have never been on the front, you have never been on the battlefield, and you are the one who is good, or who are good at standing on the panel to give your point of view, while sometimes happen not to be true. So I wouldn't say that we are forcing, but we say that anybody that engages in false information or in false intelligence sharing or false information sharing that intend to demoralize the country, we will give the person the opportunity to go on the battlefield. We'll give the opportunity to go on the battlefield so that the person can eyewitness what is going on seriously and come back to the city where he was making the comment, and he will have a better understanding of the situation. So that is what is happening. It is not that it means that the population, the government is trying to overpower the people. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it so. It's true that we have freedom of expression, but we are in time of war, and so there are certain information that really intend to demoralize the civilian or the citizen, and worse, where we are today, there are certain people in the country who are driven by personal interests. There are certain people like that. They are driven by certain interests and they want to just tarnish the image of the ruling power so that they could gain ground. They could strike a chord with the citizen and make their own, and like it's kind of playing politics. It's kind of playing politics. So this is one of the reasons why certain people are engaging in sharing bad information, which will not help us in this fight. So that's why sometimes these people, we just give them the opportunity to go on the ground, okay? Because there is no supreme Burkinabe. Even if you are a doctor, you're a professor, you are any, no matter your title, those who are on the front, the soldiers who are there, nobody is better than them. They are fighting for all of us. So if they happen to do their best, anybody that stays on the panel, on panelists that stand on TV shows and sharing bad information, we give just the person the opportunity to go on the ground, the battlefield, and to eyewitness. So I wouldn't say that it is forcing the people because that note was made clear to everybody.
Okay, so if we get you correctly, what you're saying is that to avoid misinformation, the caveat on ground is that you are made to go to the battlefield to see what's going on, and then you come back to the city and, of course, say what you saw. Is that what you're saying is on ground at the moment, to control misinformation?
That is it. It is meant for that. Because there are certain people they don't master. When you are in cities and sitting on TV shows and you can talk easily, like I'm doing here right now. You can talk easily, okay? But you need to make sure that what you're saying is is trustworthy. It is something that is well assessed. It's something that is true as regards what you are saying on the ground. Some people have never lived in Ouagadougou, that is the capital city. Yeah? So how come would somebody that has never lived in Ouagadougou city sometimes be claiming mastery of what is happening at a very remote place in Burkina Faso? Sometimes it is not true. Sometimes these people are people who just want to demoralize the population and set certain kind of threats, certain kind of, making them afraid so that they could stand up and say, nothing is improving. We need to act, or we need to change those people who are on the power. You see, sometimes it is linked to that. So that is why the initiative was taken, and I personally, I buy into it.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, at this point, we need to go on a quick break. Of course, when we come, we will dig a bit deeper. This time around, we'll be looking at the European Union's investigation into the reported killing of around 100 people in Burkina Faso. This and more after the break. Stay with us. This is still Secure the Continent, and we have been looking at the European Union's investigation into the reported killings of around 100 people in Burkina Faso earlier this week. And of course, still on the show is Koanou Mouloro, political analyst from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and Adib, Sani, security expert from Accra, Ghana. Thank you so much for staying on, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to start off the second half of the conversation with you. Of course, talking about your Adib, where the EU foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, actually called on Burkina Faso's military junta to shed light on the circumstances of this very, very disturbing investigation where around 100 people were killed in a recent raid. Now, the U.S. has also condemned this. Now, what is the implication of this, will I say, particular action, and what should we expect next from these bodies?
Okay, so one of the reasons we have gotten to where we have over the years, particularly in Burkina Faso, is how these jihadists are able to take over territory, especially these ungoverned spaces where government services don't reach the people. They take over, impose a government of some sort on the people, impose taxes, have a jurisprudence in place, and guess what? The terrorists in some cases are able to provide the people certain services that their governments are not able to provide them. So when it happens that way, guess what happens next? These terrorists are able to win the hearts and minds of the people. They have the cooperation of the people, and the government, on the other hand, would rather be seen as the enemy. Now, when Mali and Burkina first announced, especially Burkina, that they'll be using VDPs, volunteer fighters and all that, some of us were concerned about how things would pan out, considering the ethnically diverse nature of the country and the possibility that some volunteers might target some ethnic extractions based on just identity differences. And that would exacerbate the whole situation, because the terrorists enjoy that. They enjoy when there's disunity, when people are not united and are apprehensive and are hostile towards one another, okay? So in this situation, it plays to the advantage of the terrorists, because they would always ask, who do you think is the friend? Who do you think is the foe? So if the government is supposed to protect the people, yet they do as the terrorists do, then it becomes a dangerous situation. But I wouldn't be able to sit here to say whether indeed it was deliberate or not. But based on the face value, it is very dangerous for the security of Burkina Faso. So I support the call for an investigation to be done in order to find out the truth and take immediate steps to mitigate the effects of that action or that killing against terrorists also taking advantage of it.
Now, I would like to go to you, Mouloro, and take, of course, your reaction to this. I mean, you mentioned some key words in your introductory statement. You talked about Western influence and, of course, freedom, you know, which, of course, are really strong words. Now, putting all of those factors side by side, this particular call by the European Union, where, of course, should we stand, or on what premise should we stand on all of this?
Like, what do you mean? Could you tell me more? Like, you make it clear for me. I don't get you very well, please.
Okay, I said that I mean, you mentioned earlier, you made reference to words like Western influence and also freedom, particularly from the control of the West. And right now we are seeing, of course, the European Union saying that investigations need to be conducted on a reported killing of around 100 people in the country. Now, what do you make of this, side by side, the call for freedom and also Western influence?
All right, good. Thank you for that. I would say in the first place is quite normal for them to ask for investigation to be done, because that's quite what they do. That's their job. Now, what would be the impact on that? What would be the impact? Just here, as I said formerly, we are really in a situation where people are just, from my own understanding, people are trying to maintain us in a certain system, which does.
Mouloro, are you there? Okay, I think we would, of course, stay with Adib for now. Once we're able to connect with Mouloro, we will. Adib, I will still stay with you on this one. Now, since the military actually took over recently, okay, I understand we have Mouloro back. Mouloro, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, so we lost you for a moment. You might want to continue.
All right, sorry, I'm sorry. So just as I said, some of the time, we happen to say that maybe we have this kind of mentality where when we are always thinking that the Western world is trying to put us and have control over us, but in reality, it's a fact. It's a fact. So we here, the young generation, not only the young generation of Burkina Faso, but almost all the people around Africa are just trying to read between the lines and to know which side favors them, and which does not. So there is, of course, there is Western influence because they are providing with a lot of budget, they are providing with a lot of help that sometimes help the population and even the country at the same time. So I would say just sometimes you just exaggerate it. If you go back and you take the case of Niger, where we had the France ambassador who almost refused to leave the country, yet the authorities were asking to leave the country. We said this kind of example are just exemplification of the kind of power these people want to still have in Africa here, where they are not being welcomed at these days as we speak now. So just to say, as regard to the report, what the EU asked is quite normal, and I think they are working on that so that you just make these things clear for the international international public, for the people beyond Burkina Faso. Otherwise, we are here. The first report is supposed to be meant for Burkina in the first place, and after for the international world. So just like that.
Okay, I would like to go to you, Adib. Now, of course, since the military actually did take over, the country has been hit with international sanctions. Now, my question to you is this. Can a country like, of course, Burkina Faso, I mean, stand on its own, particularly in terms of security right now, without some sort of a foreign alliance or Western alliance?
See, without Western alliance, then I think it's ECOWAS it would have counted on. But currently, as it stands, because of the coup, ECOWAS is not so keen. Now, Burkina has gone into a military pact with Mali and Niger. But the problem is everybody is carrying his cross. The Malians are fighting on three fronts. The East, the West, Al-Qaeda and ISIS-linked militants. They are also fighting the Tuaregs in the North. We've also seen the number of attacks in Niger quadruple, more than quadruple, since the withdrawal or the end of MINUSMA. So it is surely a bit of a problem now that all of these partners are not in a position to help. Now, Burkina is almost on its own. So rather, what I'm thinking Burkina would do is to look more to the east. And that is what I suspect might even be happening with Russians getting involved, just as they are doing in Mali.
Okay, I mean, talking about Russians getting involved just as they're doing with Mali. Russia currently has its own, what I call it, issues right now. We know what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. Do you think that they would give Burkina Faso as the needed attention, even though they also have their own issues that they're grappling with at the moment?
Well, I think they would give them that attention to some extent. But my challenge is to how effective would that be? What is the capability and the capacity of the Russians? How is their intervention going to be like? Is it just training Burkina security agents, or being very much part and parcel of the ground assault? Are they supporting them with equipment? What equipment are they supporting them with? Is it intelligence? So it all would boil down to the agreements they have. But for Burkina Faso to depend on the sub-regional bloc or any other entity within, I think is almost impossible to achieve anything tangible. They should look up to their international partners and possibly also look up to even the West, because if you're in a desperate situation, I think at the point you just have to put your ego aside and look for help where it would come from.
I mean, talking about the Sahel region generally, I mean, from Nigeria, fighting the insurgents such as Boko Haram, ISWAP and the likes. I mean, we go all, up. We realize that this battle seems to be revolving and evolving. Do you think that region can come out of this fight against insurgents anytime soon, or even in the nearest future?
I strongly doubt.
Or is the approach, let me put it this way, is the approach actually, the approach currently being implemented or being adopted, is it yielding results? Is it promising?
I'm sorry to say no. We have had we've had a lot of interventions. Let me count. Look, we've had Accra Initiative, Operation Bakan, Takuba, G5, Sahel, MINUSMA, excuse me.
Yeah.
A whole lot of initiatives, okay? But when you compare the map with respect to the number of attacks in the region from 2015 to 2023, or perhaps let's say 2022, it has spread all over the West African subcontinent. So if we have all of these operations or initiatives, yet terrorism has spread, what does it mean? We have failed. And this is a question I always ask. Anytime I have, speaking engagements or I go for stakeholder programs, I ask, can you confidently look into my eyes and tell me we have succeeded so far as fighting terrorism is concerned? Nobody is able to answer the question. Why? Because we are not winning. I mean, that's the bitter truth. That is the uncomfortable truth.
Why are we not winning? What's the root cause? Some have said, I mean, are you of the school of thought of some people that said has evolved into some sort of business enterprise where some people are, some really powerful people might be benefiting from the chaos. Hence, it looks like we're all moving in circles. I mean, is there any substance to that claim?
It's a combination of a lot of factors, including what my co-panelist mentioned, the fact that there are conflict profiteers, people profiting from it. We have very, very top government officials who are involved in all of these business. But I think overall, our inability to make giant strides is the approach. It's so military in nature, okay? It's all about soldiers and the deployment of soldiers and all that. No, I think the focus should be very much be on the human insecurities, youth not having jobs, people living on less than $1 a day. Nigeria, for example, has one of the largest population living on less than $1. In fact, Nigeria and India have the largest number of people living below the poverty line. Nigeria has close to 100 million poor people in the country. Issues of corruption, issues of human rights violations. We are not making any conscious, progressive attempt to address issues concerning very vulnerable people like women, like young people, like the disabled. A lot of young people don't have jobs. There are sources of livelihood has been taken away from them, some deliberately, some because of climate change. How many governments have clear-cut climate change policies in their countries? So until we address it from the very root cause, the fundamental issues, the deep-seated socioeconomic and geopolitical deficits in the African society, we would have more terrorists created. Because the thing is, the more terrorists you kill, the more you create.
All right, let me quickly go back to you, Mouloro, because we are pressed with time. What do you see as a way forward? I mean, you've said that to some extent, Burkina Faso has made some sort of, positive stride in its fight. But what would you rather suggest as a way forward to further boost this fight against insurgency in the country?
Before I proceed any further, I'd like to say really thank you to my panelists for his very bright intervention, and I really appreciate it. Now, as to the question you asked me, for us to really tackle this serious issue, I think the profiteers, those people who are trying to make us, who are trying to profit from this kind of terrorism, and more specifically the top leaders, what they should do should just be to be patriots. They should learn, they should think about the population, they should think about the country. It's true. Most of the countries here, most of the people in Africa are living in a extreme in poverty. Sure, we want money. As to me, the best way that will help us, the thing that will help us to really to escalate the progress would be for those profiteers to get back on track and to know that they have one country, they have a country that they should try to develop many initiatives. Because these are the people who are sometimes, they are making the issues worse because they are not helping. They are making the issues worse. And beyond that, it's true, I'm not like making the propaganda of making weapons and all these things. But apart from that, why are we still not making real progress? Sometimes we don't have weapons. We don't have the real weapons that can help us really to fight these terrorists. These terrorists, who we are sometimes even less equipped than them. So that is another fact. And apart from that, the population themselves, everybody should be a true agent. Everybody is supposed to be a true agent of positive change. nobody let should let themselves be manipulated by whatever people or whatever kind of people that it is. Everybody should know that they are the patriot. They are the ones who should take the country to the next level. I think by the time everybody understands that, by the time everybody abides by that, and by the time everybody tries to make progress in that line, until then, will we be able to tackle seriously this issue that
All right.
happen to be never ending?
All right, Koanou, thank you so much for your contribution there. Gentlemen, Koanou Mouloro, political analyst from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and Adib Sani, security expert from Accra, Ghana. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.